Yeah. Well, I'd love to start off by maybe hearing a little bit about like your writing careers and what led you to the point of writing off social. Mary Kay, do you want to start?
Yes, I would love to. I am Mary Kay. I live in East Texas, and I am a speaker, freelance editor, and co owner of another ministry called New Mercies for Moms. And then, of course, I do writing off social with Sandy. And I really started writing in 2017. So it doesn't seem that long ago in the scheme of things. But I cut my teeth on freelance writing. So I focused on writing for several different outlets over the years. It kind of ranged from small blogs to global nonprofits. And I have also self published two devotional card sets with my ministry, New Mercies for Moms, and a set of prayer activity cards for moms and kids. So that's a little bit about my writing career. And I know you want us to share how we got to writing off social. I'm going to let Sandy introduce herself because her story is really where my story begins.
Yeah. So I'm Sandy, as you stated. I am a mom to four kids. My youngest is 18. My oldest is about to turn 26, which is crazy. My first son, Noah, died when he was 9 months old. I've been married to John for 30 years. I am the co founder of Writing Off Social with Mary Kay. And I started blogging back in 2008 and a blog that I called God Speaks Today. It eventually changed to The Scoop on Balance. I am the author of three self published books. I have a Substack newsletter called Behind the Balance. And for the last now 6 years, I have been the podcast host of the Balance Momcast, where I help frazzled moms find peace. And I do that all from here in sunny Jacksonville, Florida, which is beautiful this time of year. But my writing career sort of started back in 2008 when I started that blog, and that was also the same time that I opened my first social media account. And that was the heydays of blogging where you could get on there, you could share something on your Facebook wall and share it to your real friends, and then they would actually share it and things would grow. And it wasn't long until publishers and literary agents started taking notice of bloggers. They became sought after in the industry. And because I was looking to traditionally publish at the time, I started taking my social media presence and my blogging presence very seriously because that is what the metric that they were using in order to decide if they wanted to work with me. And so what I did is I went all in on everything I knew to go in. And that was at by 2016, I had Facebook, I had Pinterest, I had Twitter, I had Instagram, and it consumed all my days. And so I also had 3 kids at the time, and so in between cooking meals and, practicing flash math facts, flashcards with math facts, I was also obsessively posting and checking and responding and posting and checking and responding and posting and checking and responding. And I really started asking myself the question, is this the writing life that I envisioned? Because I really envisioned writing to be more fulfilling and more sustainable and not so like crazy. And it took me a few more years, but I eventually decided that the answer to that question was no. It was a resounding no, actually. So on September 11th, 2019, against the advice of everyone I knew in the writing industry, I took a 1 year social media hiatus to write and self publish my second book. And after a brief return, just a, like a, I did like a year and 3 months actually because I didn't really want to come back. I came back for just a few months at that when I returned, and I realized that social media was not where I wanted to be at all. And so I left for good on March 18th, 2021. And then in June 2022, so Mary Kay comes in the story at this point, but I just want to like say what got me on even talking about social media because I left and other than like doing an exit post and just telling people I was leaving and where they could find me, I didn't I didn't think it was I thought no one cares that I'm not on social media, as long as I'm producing things. And so in June of 2022, after releasing my third self-published book, I started working with a business coach who was trying to help me like really narrow down my message. And he encouraged me at that time. He's like, the most interesting thing you're talking about right now is leaving social media. And I'm thinking, really, that is the most interesting thing? Because like I think that's the least interesting thing that I'm talking about. And he said, why don't we make you the mom who gets moms off social media? And I was like, I do not want to be the mom who gets moms off social media. I feel like it's a very personal decision. And for moms, especially because moms are on for a variety of reasons. And I am not here to try to convince anyone else to get off. But he said, just try it. We'll test the water, see what happens. So I produce, this whole thing and go on a podcast tour to be the mom who gets moms off social media. And while I was on that tour, I confirmed that I did not, in fact, want to be the mom who got moms off social media. But what I did discover was that I loved talking to the podcast hosts and other writers who were like having sidebar conversations with me before and after the recordings and being like, okay, no, for real, how are you doing this? And so I started getting very excited at that point. And so I'm going to let Mary Kay take over because she intersects my story in the middle of all of that. And that's
Yeah. So she had gone on that podcast tour in 2022, but back in 2019, when she decided to take that first hiatus, we were in an online writing community together, and that's where we met. And she made an announcement that she was getting off social media in the name of writing her book. And at the time, I had two little ones, 4 months old, or 2 years old and 2 months old. And so I was also trying to figure out how to grow my platform on social media and be present as a parent. It just didn't seem compatible. So when she made that announcement, I private messaged her and I was like, how are you doing this? Tell me. And we quickly took our conversation off of social media and started talking over Voxer and never really stopped, honestly, years later. Our relationship grew to include all aspects of our life. But one topic we could never really get far away from was social media and the role that it was playing in our lives and in our work. And while Sandy decided to get off for good in 2021, I was not ready to make that leap. I really loved Instagram. I was very invested there. It was really the only way I was connecting with my audience at the time. And so I felt like leaving was going to be committing career suicide. However, I eventually decided to leave. And in 2022, Sandy and I attended a writing conference together. And I had just gotten off of social media, so it was all very fresh for me. And I remember sitting listening to this writers' conference and realizing that every speaker that came on the stage was assuming that all of us as participants were growing our platform on social media. There was no conversation about growing your business or your writing career with any other pathway but social media. And Sandy and I looked at each other and we thought, why is no one talking about other alternatives? And about an hour later, Sandy turned to me and she was like, maybe we should be the ones to talk about all the other alternatives. And I thought, maybe. And
we
so
are the people.
maybe we are the ones. And so that is how Writing Off Social was born, in a very long story of how we came to be.
I love it. Well, and Sandy, I believe, did you delete your socials altogether or do you still have some currently?
They are deactivated. And that just, I mean, I did it in stages. I didn't immediately deactivate even. I just kind of, left them for a while and then I went back and unfriended all the people on Facebook and then I don't know, like 1 or 2 summers ago, I was going to just take a month off of everything and so I deactivated like for the month of August. And then when August was over, I thought, well, I don't really want to go back. And so they've just been deactivated since I think August of 2023, probably.
Mhm.
Okay,
So, but
gotcha.
not deleted. They're still there.
Yeah. Mary Kay, are you similar?
No, mine are still active in the sense that you could search for me on Instagram and I'm there, but it's my final post is, hey, I'm off social media. And my bio says, I'm not here anymore. Find me on Writing Off Social.
I
So,
love it.
yeah. So it's there as almost a business card, and that's about it.
Awesome. Yeah, that's kind of how I have mine too. I have an Instagram and Facebook. I haven't deactivated them, but I never go on anymore.
Mhm.
And I keep feeling nudged, like maybe I should just delete it. Maybe I should just get out of it, because I think that the culture says you have to be there. You have to have at least a presence, even if you're not
Right.
posting and all the things. But what I love about your story is that you guys did it differently. You didn't care what the world was saying. You were leaning into what God was telling you to do.
Yes.
And you took that leap when it seemed very countercultural and
Mhm.
very unwise business for a business decision too. So I'm curious, what fears did you have around leaving social media?
Well, I'll tell you, I'll answer this one, and if Mary Kay wants to follow up. But my biggest fear for real was I being a bad steward of what God had given me? Because I knew God had given me people to lead. And my ideal reader and listener in my personal work outside of writing off social is overwhelmed Christian moms. And so I was really struggling with like, okay, so what if I guess the lie that social media tells you and the lie that I feel like if we can talk candidly about spiritual things here, the
Mhm.
lie that the enemy would tell you is that it's your problem. And if you can't handle it, it's you. And so I felt like the reason social media was making me feel so anxious and depressed and glitchy all the time was because I couldn't handle it. And is that fair to all the people who I'm leading to ditch them and not use all the resources that God's given me? And because everyone has parts of their job that stinks, and this is the part of your job that stinks, Sandy. So just suck it up and do it. And so I feel like that like my biggest wrestling was with God and saying, God, are you asking me to stay here or can I leave? And once I felt that release from God, that permission to go, and when he assured me that we would find other ways to reach my reader, then all the other fears dissipated because at that point I thought it doesn't matter what else I'm afraid of because if God is with me, then I don't need to be afraid.
Mm.
Mm.
Yeah, and I struggled a lot with fear as well, and I think mine centered around feeling like giving up social media meant giving up my dreams. Those were very tightly combined in my mind, and it came from the fact that at the time, publishing houses, agents were all saying, if you want to be traditionally published, you have to have a massive social media presence, and that was my dream, was to be traditionally published. And so I felt that if I was going to leave social media, I would be closing the door forever on becoming traditionally published. And it took me a really long time to work through that. And once I finally did leave and I kinda had that moment, I was, it took me about 6 months, I think, wouldn't you say, Sandy,
Yeah.
to kind of work through like, detangle the lies of,
Yes.
like, where social media ended and where my writing career began. Like, I
Yes.
had to really sort through that, and Sandy helped me, and once I did and I started to see all the possibilities and all the ways that I was just coloring with that one single crayon of social media, and there was, like, 63 other crayons in the box, and that's when it all changed for me.
Mm. Yeah, it's like we put social media on a pedestal. Like, this
Mhm.
is the answer. It's the thing that we need. It's the thing that grows our business without
Right.
thinking about the alternatives or thinking outside the box or even just allowing God to lead our marketing and
That's
to
right.
say, no, I can do it. I can do it my way. I don't have to do it the world's way. I don't have to do it the way you think it has to be done. Right. And I think that it's really important for us, for those who are feeling nudged to get off social, to really understand and create a path for themselves to leave social media without regret. And I know
Yeah.
that's something that you two have taught a lot about, and you have a few keys in doing that. Can we start with maybe we talking about like the mindset piece of leaving
Yes.
social media?
Yes. So the first thing that I had to I like to use an illustration to kind of explain the big giant mindset shift. So I'll just say the first key to leaving social media, or the key to leaving social media without regret is to find something that you like better. Find something that works better. That's the key because once you find things that work better, you won't even miss social media. So I like to use an illustration back in 2018 because I wasn't feeling very well. I didn't know I was going through the menopause, but I was going through the menopause, and so I was messing around with my diet, and so I decided I was going to try a whole foods plant-based diet. I was just going to do it for 30 days, but what was hard to do when you're cutting out all meat and dairy is try to figure out what you're going to eat instead. And so what I ended up doing is I went into the produce section and into like the beans and lentils section and the pasta section and the grain section. And I just tried to take note of things that I had never eaten before. And I took some courses on how to prepare plant-based foods. And I started looking up recipes and I started trying things in a new way and making combinations of things that I had never had before. And after I started doing that, not only did my entire well-being change, like I felt so much better, but I also realized that there was so much to eat that wasn't meat or dairy that I didn't miss meat or dairy at all. Like there's literally never a day that goes by except for sometimes I want cheese. But there's almost never a day that goes by that I think I wish that I was still eating the way I was before because what I do now is so much better. And I feel like it's the same with social media. So we just want to say if you hear nothing else, once you find something that works better, that's how you leave without regret. You have no regrets when you feel better. So the first mindset, step one, as you said, is to change your mindset. And the first faulty mindset is that you need social media to sell your products. And the truth is, and the shift is that unless you have a huge ad budget, social media's organic conversion rate is not good. It wasn't always true. Prior to the big algorithm change in 2018, social media worked really well, especially for writers and entrepreneurs trying to sell their work. But currently, the conversion rate, and this is just for book sales because we're writers, is less than 0.1%. That means that for every 1,000 followers you have on social media, you sell one book. And so
Mm.
the shift in mindset is that you do not need social media to sell your products. There are several alternate ways to sell them that have a higher ROI. So mindset number 2, and these are all things that Mary Kay and I have had to come to very organically, is that social media is where all the people are. And if we leave, how will we get to the people? And so the truth is that yes, while currently, I think the most current statistics are over 5 billion people are on social media, statistically, you are not reaching them on social media. That's the truth. And we like to use an analogy of being in a big giant stadium of 100,000 people. So you see all these people around you, everybody's screaming, everyone is trying to get the attention of everyone else in the stadium, but there are only a few people who have access to the stage, and only a few of those people on the stage have a microphone. And they keep changing the rules about who gets on the stage and who gets the microphone. The reality is you don't have access to those 100,000 people any more than you have access to the 5 billion people on social media. You just don't have it. Your ideal client, your ideal reader, depending on who you're talking to, she is out there living a lot of other life. And so she might be going to conferences, going to church, attending support groups, visiting the local library, going to her children's school, volunteering in her community, reading emails, putting her questions into a Google search bar. There are so many other ways that you can reach her that have a better ROI and that actually allow you to reach her. And then the third mindset, I have 2 more. One is that social media is just a neutral tool, and that's one I hear people say a lot, that it's just all in how you use it, it's just neutral. But the truth is that social media is not neutral. Those tools were designed to engage, they were designed they're broken business models, in fact. They are designed to make billions of dollars by modifying your behavior to the point of addiction for the sole purpose of extracting your data and selling it to advertisers. And so we have all kinds of quotes and statistics. I know we don't have a lot of time on but Sean Parker, who was one of the founders of Facebook, infamously said in 2017, the thought process that went into building these applications, Facebook being the first of them, was all about how do we consume as much of your time and conscious attention as possible. These are the
Mm.
founders and the creators of the platforms are now admitting that that is exactly what they do. And so you are up against a $1 billion industry that is actively pouring its resources in researching and implementing addictive technology to ensure that you can't leave. And so it is not neutral. It is not neutral.
Mm.
And finally, the final mindset that we've had to change is that social media is a necessary evil. Kind of like what I said before. This is just a part of our job. If you don't like it, just go in and do the hard thing, get in, get out, you'll be fine. But the truth is that as believers, there is no such thing as a necessary evil.
Mm.
It feels like you can't leave. It may feel like you are trapped there, but God does not trap us. God always invites us. That's something that Stephanie Gass said to us when she was on our podcast. Um, if you feel like you have been given a message and you've been called to share it, it may feel irresponsible to leave social media, but if social media makes you feel depressed, anxious, lonely, we want to encourage you that for the sake of your mental health, it is reason enough to leave.
Wow. That is, I mean, just so powerful. Those four reasons, those four mindset shifts that we need to make. And I love how you shared the God doesn't trap us, he invites us. I think that's really important because social media is a trap. It can become an idol if we put too much time into it. Because what is an idol? It's anything that takes our attention away from serving God. And we may not even notice that we think, oh, I've only been on for a half hour, right? But we've been on for three
Mhm.
hours. And it just sucks us in. And I know for me, I was just feeling so much negative. And that I was like, I'm done with this. And the comparison, like I didn't want to compare my business to others or my
Right.
parenting to others or anything. I just wanted to do what I felt called to do. And leaving has left me feeling free in that way. And the other thing that I heard is the ROTI. I think we think about what is the return on investment on our financial thing that we did? What's the return on investment on this business endeavor that I did, right? We think about it in all different ways, but we never actually put a ROTI on social media. We
Mhm.
don't dive into that to see, am I actually making money doing this or am I wasting time?
Right.
And so I think that's really important to think about it in an ROTI way.
Agree.
Mm,
Yeah. Agree.
so good. So let's dive into the second step to leaving social media without regret. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So for your second step, once you've changed your mindset and kind of wrapped your mind around those things that you thought were true but really aren't, the second step is to think about how you're using social media. So again, going back to the ROTI, like just being really analytical about it. How was I using this in the first place? And so we like to use the analogy of if you were trying to get rid of your iPhone, and we are not negative on the iPhone, like we use it, we love it.
Mhm.
But if you were trying to ditch your iPhone and move to a flip phone, you would have to be really thoughtful about that step because we use our iPhone for everything, right? We
Mhm.
use it, it's our alarm clock, it's our GPS, it's our music player, our photo album, it's everything. And so there's also not a one-to-one replacement for the iPhone. You can't just ditch it and pick up something else. You'd almost have to go out and buy an alarm clock to replace it. You'd have to buy a GPS. You'd have to get a camera. You'd have to buy individual things to replace it for the way that you were using it. And the same is true for social media. So, right now, there's not a one to one replacement for social media. So, if you're going to leave it without regret, you need to figure out how you were using it so that you can find new ways of achieving those same goals. So for writers, Sandy and I spent a lot of time thinking about how we were using social media. We talked to other writers about how they were using it, and we've boiled it down to really four goals that people were trying to achieve during their time on social media. And those goals were growth, first of all, trying to increase their numbers of followers and the size of their audience. Another goal was nurturing. So they were trying to use social media to establish that like, know, trust with their audience and to share their message with them. The third goal was community. So they were not only helping the audience feel connected to them, but to each other. And then also trying to use social media to build their own personal network and community peer to peer. And we'll be honest, community is one of the harder ones to replace of the four goals. And then the final goal that a lot of people are using social media for is for sales, obviously promoting and selling your book or your course or any other offering. And so once you understand how you are using social media and the goals that you were trying to achieve there, then you're ready to move on to that final step. And so I can share the final step if you want, or if you wanted to comment on any of that?
Yeah. Well, the only thing I can say is I love how you broke that down where it's like, don't just get off, but think about how
Mhm.
you are using it because we're not getting off just to get off. We're getting off to be purposeful and more intentional in what we're doing.
Yes. Yeah, that's something that we talk to our writers a lot about is we're not encouraging you to get off of social media and go into oblivion. Like you
Mhm.
do need to have a platform because your platform is how you connect with your audience, but that platform is not synonymous with social media. There's a ton of ways that you can build that platform. And so once you understand what you were trying to achieve, then you can move on and find that better way. That step 3, the final step to leaving social media without regret is to find a better way to reach your customer or your ideal reader. And so, finding those alternative pathways, we call them pathways, ways that
Mhm.
you can connect with your reader. And so, for writers, we've identified 10 that are just really working very well for writers right now. And those 10 are things like collaboration, so working with other authors,
Mhm.
community connections, creating connections right there in your local community with other business owners and just different people. SEO, blogging, Substack is really popular right now and in doing great things for writers. Or freelance writing and article submission are all ways that you can find your reader outside of social media. But the heavy hitters that we believe will work for anyone, no matter their business model, is podcasting. If you love and would like to host your own podcast, that is a really effective way to grow an audience in its own right. Also, going on a podcast tour. So, if you don't want to invest all the time and energy in buying the equipment, a podcast tour is a powerful way to borrow other people's audiences and get your product in front of them. And then also public speaking. If you're an introvert and you love to be literally center stage and in the middle of the action, public speaking is a really powerful way to grow your audience without being on social media.
I love those. And what you're sharing is like, those are nurturing as well. They're helping to build trust and authority and really helping them to see how you teach, how you lead. And that goes a long way compared to a post that is here today, gone tomorrow.
That's right.
Yes, yeah, and these do take a ton of time and
Yeah.
energy, and so a lot of people will say, "Well, isn't doesn't that just take so much time?" And our response is always, "Yes, but consider how much time you were spending on social media to create that one-minute reel that disappeared and will never be again. Those podcast episodes that you take the time to create, those are evergreen. They're there
Mhm.
forever." So it's a ROI. What are you pouring your time into, and what are you getting out of it?
Yeah, for sure. I think that was one of the others that you touched on that I think is really important that a lot of us forget about because we're online. Our
Right.
community, we could make such an impact right where we are. Get out there in person or just connecting, having meetups inside the community, networking in person. They're very powerful ways to get referrals and to get business.
Yes.
So
We totally
awesome.
agree. Yes.
Now, I have a couple quick fire questions before we wind down for each of you. What is one alternative platform or method that you've personally seen work really well for you aside from social media?
Yeah, I
So
think for me, it's probably going to be podcast tours. I think that has been one of the most effective. When you go on a podcast tour, again, you're able to expand your professional network. You're getting to know the podcast host. You're expanding your reach, and you get to borrow their platform and speak to their audience. So it doesn't require a ton of money or energy, and or even a ton of time of editing and post production. So you can just show up and be yourself and share your message and point people to your product, and it's just a really great way to grow your email list and sell your products.
Mm.
yeah, and for me, podcasting and Substack, the combination of those two things are working really well for me right now. The growth of both of those things just continues. It's passive. I also am able to sell. With my 3 books, I'm able to talk about books 6 years ago in the first season that still sell on a regular basis because when people discover the podcast now 6 years later, they go back and listen from the beginning. And so book sales are consistent and everything just continues to grow. So yeah.
I love that. Thanks for sharing. And
Mhm.
also, I'm curious, what has God taught you in either the quiet space or just the space that social media used to fill? What are some things that you've learned from being off?
I'll start with that one. I think the main thing that I have learned is that what I pay attention to is what I am becoming. And I
Mm,
didn't make that phrase up. I've heard it, but it resonates with me deeply. And that when I pay attention to, even as a consumer of social media, if I am paying attention to things that inspire uh, anxiety and fear, that I will become an anxious and fearful person. But if I instead take that time and redirect those things to, of course, spending time with the Lord, but then also just pouring myself into the people in my home and the people in my life, and spending time creating long form content that will bless other people, that isn't always dependent upon an instant reaction. If I pay attention to those things, my goal honestly is to be the spunky old lady who sits on the front porch that has all this wisdom that young women just want to be around her. And I'm not going to become that unless I invest in things that make me wise and spunky. And so I just want to become a non-anxious, wise woman. And I won't be able to do that if I spend 2 hours a day on social media, which is what I was doing.
Mm.
love that.
Yeah. And I think what I have learned is just that I can trust God with my business. One of the verses that I came across after leaving social media was Psalm 138:8. The Lord will work out his plans for my life. And I have just clung to that. I've learned that I can trust his voice. I can trust when he says to leave. I can trust when he says to go. He is not going to give me a dream and then expect me to figure it out. He's going to give me a dream and then he's going to say, walk with me and let's do it together. And that's been an incredibly powerful lesson for me.
So good. I love that. Walk with me. Let's do it together. That's what God's invitation is for us. We don't have to do it alone. We don't have to have the strength. We don't have the strength, but walk with me and I'll lead you through. Oh, so good. That's a great way to end.